Princess Liara moved swiftly through the towering trees of Saratha's prime, her emerald eyes scanning the forest with both curiosity and caution. The planet's forests were unlike anything she had read about in the royal archives. Giant crystalline plants glowed faintly, illuminating the mossy ground beneath her boots, while strange birds with translucent wings flitted from branch to branch. The air was crisp, tinged with a metallic scent that reminded her of rain on a steel roof. It was her favorite time of the year, the ceremonial hunt, but unlike previous hunts, she insisted on leading it herself. The elders of the court had frowned, whispering that a princess should not risk herself among predators and traps. Liara ignored them. She had always felt more alive when the forest stretched around her, more alert and more capable than in the gilded halls of the palace. The hunt was not just a ritual. It was a way to test loyalty, skill, and courage. Warriors from many corners of the galaxy had gathered on Saratha's prime to prove themselves worthy of serving the crown. They were tall, lithe, and polished, with armor that reflected the glow of the forest and weapons that hummed with energy. To Liara, they seemed more like statues than living beings, perfect in appearance, predictable in action, and completely lacking the spark that made survival real. She had watched them in training, and she knew the truth. None of them would survive the true wild without strict orders or guidance. None of them could improvise. That was when she saw him. Cadden stumbled into her path, eyes wide with confusion, his uniform ragged and dusty, and a strange device clutched tightly in his hands. He froze as he saw her, clearly unprepared for what he was facing. Unlike the other warriors, Cadden was not polished or practiced. He did not carry himself with perfect posture or the ease of someone trained for ceremony and combat. Yet there was something different about him, an alertness, a raw curiosity, and a strange confidence that did not rely on skill or tradition. "Who are you?" Liara asked, her voice steady, though curiosity laced it. Cadden swallowed hard. I'm Cadden. I'm human. My ship crashed. I didn't mean to." His words tumbled out disorganized, but there was an honesty to them that made Liara smile faintly. Humans were rare here, and their presence always caused a stir among the alien races. They were unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability had its uses. Before Liara could speak again, a sudden rustling broke the calm. From the shadows of the crystalline trees, enormous predators emerged, their bodies sleek and jagged, glowing faintly in colors that shifted with their mood. The forest seemed to tremble with their movements. Most warriors would have frozen, calculating the perfect move, but Liara acted. With a swift gesture, she motioned Cadden behind her, pulling him to safety as a predator lunged toward them. Cadden stumbled, his hand brushing against her arm, and instinctively she caught him. Something about his hesitation and his human clumsiness reminded her of her own first hunts as a girl. "Stay close," she ordered. "Watch me and move when I move." Their strikes were precise, their movements predictable, and the creatures quickly adapted to their attacks. She needed an advantage. She looked at Cadden. "Do you know anything about traps?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. I can try. On Earth, we improvise. We use what's around us." He grabbed a thick vine and a crystal shard, quickly tying the shard to the vine in a way that made a makeshift snare. He darted to a clearing and set it, then motioned to Liara to lure the predators toward it. With her skill and his improvisation, the first predator was caught, its glowing limbs flailing as it struggled. Liara's heart raced. This human, so small and seemingly untrained, had just done something the most disciplined Sarathian warriors could not have imagined. The remaining predators hesitated, confused by the sudden loss of their companion. Liara took the opportunity to strike, her spear moving faster than the eye could follow, driving them back into the shadows. When the forest fell silent again, she turned to Cadden. He was panting, his hands scratched, but his eyes shone with pride. "You saved my hunt," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "You saved me," Cadden replied, a small grin forming despite the exhaustion. The forest seemed to hum around them, acknowledging their bond even if neither fully understood it yet. By the time they returned to the palace, the other warriors had already started whispering. A human had been claimed by the princess. This was unprecedented. The court murmured with suspicion, questioning the wisdom of Liara's choice. A human could not possibly be trained, refined, or disciplined enough to stand alongside the royal line, yet Liara ignored them. She had seen Cadden's courage and ingenuity firsthand. At the palace, the elders formally acknowledged the claim. According to Sarathian tradition, when a princess chooses a warrior during a ritual hunt, the warrior becomes bound to her service. Cadden, still recovering from the hunt, found himself suddenly part of a society he barely understood. There were customs to learn, weapons to handle, and rituals that seemed more like puzzles than rules. The court watched with anticipation and skepticism. The human would either fail spectacularly or, against all odds, rise to meet the challenge. Liara, however, did not doubt him. She saw something in Cad that the rest of Saratha's prime had failed to notice. Humans were not bound by rigid rules. They could adapt, innovate, and think differently. Where alien warriors relied on precision and protocol, Cadden relied on instinct and creativity. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also powerful. Over the next few days, Liara introduced Cadden to the palace, the training grounds, and the history of the Sarathian warriors. He struggled with every lesson, tripping over unfamiliar weapons, misunderstanding complex battle formations, and confusing traditional commands. But each mistake was followed by rapid learning. Cadden observed, thought, and then applied solutions in ways that amazed Liara. He did not memorize the rules, he understood the principles behind them. During one exercise, the warriors were tasked with navigating a complex obstacle course designed to test speed, precision, and strategic thinking. Cadden fell repeatedly, tangled in ropes, slipping over stones, and colliding with moving targets. The other warriors laughed quietly, dismissing him as hopeless. But Cadden's determination never wavered. He studied the patterns, observed weaknesses, and improvised shortcuts that no Sarathian had ever considered. By the end of the course, he completed it not just successfully, but in a way that impressed even the seasoned instructors. Liara watched from above, a mixture of pride and awe on her face. She realized that this human was not just surviving. He was changing the way she thought about leadership, courage, and strategy. The rigid traditions of Saratha's prime were being challenged, not by force, but by a simple, unassuming human who refused to give up. That night, as the twin moons rose over the crystalline forests, Liara and Cadden stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The palace lights glimmered below, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of alien night creatures. "You've done well today," Liara said softly. Cadden shrugged. "I'm just trying to keep up. You're very fast." "I don't know if I belong here. I'm just human, weak in your world." "That is strength, Cadden, even if you don't see it yet." The stars above shimmered as if in agreement, and far below, the palace guards whispered rumors of the human who had been claimed by the princess. Few believed he could survive the trials ahead, but Liara knew better. She had seen the spark, and sometimes that spark was enough to ignite a revolution. The morning sun glinted off the crystalline towers of the palace as Cadden struggled to keep up with the other warriors. The training grounds were alive with movement. Sarathian soldiers moved with precise rhythm, their weapons slicing through the air in perfect arcs. Their armor gleamed under the twin suns, and their bodies were honed by years of ritualized training. Cadden, by contrast, stumbled through the dust, his human legs unaccustomed to the speed and agility of the alien form. Every step felt awkward, every motion exaggerated. Princess Liara observed him from a raised platform, her eyes sharp yet patient. She knew he struggled, but that was part of the process. She could see it in his eyes, his determination, his refusal to quit despite every failure. Many of the Sarathian warriors mocked him quietly, whispering among themselves. "A human?" they sneered. "The princess must have lost her mind." The day began with the agility course, a complex series of suspended platforms, swinging ropes, and rotating obstacles. The course was designed to test balance, speed, and reaction time. A misstep could send a warrior plummeting into a pit filled with glowing crystals that, while harmless, would mark them as failures. Cadden's first attempt was disastrous. He slipped from the first rope, tumbled over a platform, and barely avoided falling into the pit. The Sarathians muttered in amusement, but Liara's gaze never wavered. Cadden took a deep breath and tried again. He studied the patterns of the obstacles, noting the timing of the rotating platforms, the sway of the ropes, and the spacing of the handholds. Where Sarathians relied on strength to pull themselves across, Cadden relied on observation and improvisation. He used momentum in ways that the aliens had never imagined, swinging across gaps with a rhythm that seemed unpredictable yet precise. By the end of the course, Cadden was covered in scratches, dust, and sweat, but he had finished it, something that several seasoned warriors had failed to do. Liara allowed herself a small smile. This was only the beginning, but it was a start. Next came the combat simulation, where warriors faced holographic enemies that mimicked the tactics of the galaxy's fiercest fighters. Cadden held a standard Sarathian blade, feeling its weight and balance in a way that was unfamiliar. His first attacks were clumsy, and he was struck multiple times by the simulated warriors. Frustration threatened to take hold, but he remembered what his father had told him on Earth. Think first. Don't fight with brute force. Fight with your mind. Cadden closed his eyes for a brief moment, imagining the patterns of movement, the angles, the weaknesses in the holographic forms. When he opened his eyes, his strikes were sharper, more deliberate. He dodged where others would block, struck where the enemy was weakest, and adapted in real time. The Sarathian instructors watched in disbelief. The human was doing something no warrior had ever done. He was learning on the spot, adjusting his strategy mid-combat. By the end of the simulation, he had defeated nearly all the holographic foes, earning the grudging respect of the instructors. Despite his progress, the other warriors continued to mock him. During a break, one of the younger soldiers approached Cadden, a smirk on his face. "You really think you belong here? You're just a human, you're weak, slow, and—" She placed a hand on Cadden's shoulder. "Do not listen to them," she said firmly. "You are here for a reason. They may not see it yet, but I do, and that reason is more important than strength alone." He was not just surviving for himself. He was surviving for her, for the trust she had placed in him, and for the chance to prove that humanity had value beyond raw strength. The afternoon brought the intelligence trials, tests designed to measure strategy, memory, and adaptability. Cadden had always excelled at puzzles on Earth, but these were unlike anything he had seen before. Holographic maps shifted constantly, alien symbols changed meaning mid-test, and the instructions were deliberately vague. The other warriors grew frustrated, relying on memorized patterns and routines. Cadden, however, observed, questioned, and adapted. He noticed small inconsistencies, patterns in the chaos, and opportunities that others missed. One by one, he solved the trials, not by brute force or repetition, but by thinking differently. His solutions were unconventional, sometimes bending the rules in ways the instructors had never considered. When he finished, Liara clapped her hands, drawing the attention of the entire court. "He thinks like a human," she said, her voice carrying across the grounds. "But do not underestimate him. There is power in thinking differently. There is strength in imagination and adaptability." Warriors were paired to complete a series of obstacles, combat simulations, and problem-solving tasks. Cadden was paired with Liara herself. The other warriors muttered under their breath. The princess should not be paired with a human. It was unfair, a spectacle, but Liara did not hesitate. "Stay close to me," she said. "Watch and act when I act. We win this together." Cadden followed her through the obstacles, learning her timing, her instincts, and her methods. When the course presented problems neither could solve alone, Cadden suggested ideas that were simple yet brilliant. He used vines and rocks to create traps, leveraged the terrain to gain advantage, and communicated with Liara in ways that were intuitive rather than formal. At one point, a massive holographic predator blocked their path. Liara raised her spear, ready to strike, but Cadden shouted, "No, use the terrain!" He spotted a loose rock formation above and quickly devised a way to collapse it, driving the predator away. Liara hesitated, trusting his judgment. The plan worked perfectly. By the end of the challenge, they crossed the finish line first, not through raw power, but through teamwork, intelligence, and adaptation. Liara looked at Cadden, pride and admiration shining in her eyes. The other warriors were stunned. They had underestimated him, and he had proved them wrong. Back at the palace, the court gathered to discuss the day's results. The elders were divided. Some argued that Cadden was an anomaly, a fluke that would soon fail under pressure. Others saw the truth. They had witnessed human ingenuity firsthand. He was different, yes, but in a galaxy ruled by tradition, that difference could be revolutionary. Liara approached the council. "Cadden is no ordinary warrior," she said firmly. "He may not be Sarathian, but he embodies what a warrior truly is: courage, adaptability, and determination. We cannot judge him by tradition alone." And he knew this was only the beginning. Later that night, as the palace settled into quiet, Cadden found himself on the balcony once more. Liara joined him, her gaze on the glowing forest below. "You surprised everyone today," she said softly. "I was just trying," Cadden replied. "I never thought I could keep up with warriors like them." "More than that, you saw opportunities they did not. That is why you are here, Cadden. Not because you are the strongest, but because you think differently. That is a gift, and one this world needs." The challenges ahead would be greater, the stakes higher, and the threats more dangerous. But for the first time, he believed he could face them. Somewhere deep in the forest, a distant howl echoed, a reminder that the world outside the palace walls was unpredictable and dangerous. Cadden clenched his fists, determination flashing in his eyes. He was a human far from home in a world that did not understand him, yet he had survived. He had adapted, and he would continue to grow for himself, for Liara, and for the spark of humanity that was only beginning to shine on Saratha's prime. That night, Cadden dreamed not of the crash that brought him here, but of the possibilities ahead. He dreamed of battles where strategy and creativity mattered more than brute force. He dreamed of standing beside the princess, not as a weak outsider, but as an equal. And in those dreams, he felt the first stirrings of something extraordinary, an adventure that could change not only him, but an entire world. The first warning came in the form of a faint hum in the sky, almost like the whisper of metal against metal. Princess Liara was walking along the palace balcony when she noticed the air vibrate, and the glowing skies over Saratha's prime seemed to ripple unnaturally. She narrowed her eyes, sensing danger before her advisors even noticed it. "Liara," one of her generals said, approaching hurriedly, "I do not like this. There is an energy signature approaching, massive but unlike anything we have seen before. It is foreign. And they have come prepared." "They are not following normal patterns," Liara said. "Do you see it?" One of the senior officers scoffed. "And what do you suggest, human, that we ignore tradition? We have to be faster, smarter, and willing to break your own rules." Energy beams cut through the sky, exploding against the city's defenses. Alarm sirens echoed and panic spread like wildfire. Sarathian warriors drew their weapons, forming ranks as they had done 1,000 times before, but Cadden noticed something the others missed. The invaders were expecting the conventional defense. They assumed the Sarathians would respond with straight lines, precise formations, and predictable moves. Cadden grabbed a communication device and shouted instructions. "Don't cluster, spread out, use the shadows and terrain, let them come to you." Together, they coordinated small squads, using the palace structures and forest edges to their advantage. Cadden suggested setting traps using fallen trees and leftover energy generators, something the Sarathians had never done. At first, the warriors hesitated, questioning the humans' judgment. But as the invaders advanced, Cadden's strategy began to work. Alien ships were slowed, their formation disrupted, and small groups were trapped in improvised barriers. One squad of Sarathian warriors tried to engage conventionally, charging at an alien landing party in tight formation. The invaders responded with precision energy blasts, forcing them to retreat. Cadden noticed the problem and shouted across the battlefield, "Flank them from the left." "Don't fight head-on." Cadden's strategy was simple, yet it was effective because it relied on creativity, adaptability, and unpredictability, human traits that the Sarathians had previously dismissed. During a brief lull, Liara caught sight of Cadden moving among the squads, directing warriors, placing improvised traps, and even disabling alien drones with quick, precise moves. Despite being outnumbered and under-equipped, he seemed everywhere at once, a whirlwind of instinct and ingenuity. "Why are they so different?" one general whispered to Liara, awed despite himself. "They're human," she replied. "And humans think differently. You can train warriors all you want, but you cannot teach instinct, creativity, and adaptability. Cadden has all three. Distract them, confuse them make mistakes." Using salvaged materials, Cadden rigged a series of explosive charges along the approach, positioning them carefully to detonate at the right moment. When the moment came, he triggered the charges. The explosion was precise, disabling the ship's shields momentarily. Liara and her team took the opportunity to strike, piercing the hull with energy spears and causing chaos aboard the alien vessel. The invaders were not expecting such a counterattack, and confusion spread through their ranks. From her vantage point, Liara saw warriors who had doubted Cadden's ability now following his lead, adapting to his unconventional strategies and striking with confidence they had never felt before. The city, once on the brink of defeat, began to turn the tide. The aliens regrouped, furious at the unexpected resistance. They unleashed a new wave of drones, faster and deadlier than before. Cadden quickly assessed the situation. "Use the environment, make them overreach," he shouted. Warriors scattered, dodging energy blasts and luring drones into traps. Trees fell, rocks rolled, and crystal shards were hurled into the drones' paths. One by one, the drones were disabled or destroyed, their operators confused by the unpredictable tactics. Amidst the chaos, Liara noticed that Cadden was pushing himself to the limit. He was running, jumping, climbing, directing, and fighting all at once. She realized that his human endurance, combined with his instinct, allowed him to perform feats no Sarathian warrior could replicate. He was changing the battlefield with every move, and in doing so he was changing the very idea of what a warrior could be. At one point, a massive alien drone broke through their defenses and targeted Liara directly. She raised her spear, ready to strike, but Cadden was faster. He dove, intercepting the drone with a makeshift barrier, and managed to redirect its trajectory just enough to save her. Both tumbled to the ground, Cadden on top of her, breathing hard. "You're reckless," Liara gasped, half amused and half exasperated. "I'm human," Cadden panted. "We don't have time for careful plans, we have to act." "Then act we shall." Their command ship limped away, damaged and humbled by a resistance they had not anticipated. The city was battered but intact. Fires burned in small areas, smoke filled the streets, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of energy blasts. Warriors moved among the injured and dying, tending to them while keeping watch for any renewed attack. Liara turned to Cadden, who was exhausted, covered in dust and scratches, but alive. "You did this," she said softly. "You saved us." The human who had stumbled into her path, untrained and unsure, had become a leader in his own right. He had not just survived, he had changed the course of the battle. His ingenuity, adaptability, and courage had turned the tide, proving that humans were not to be underestimated. Later, as the city began to recover, Liara addressed the surviving warriors. "Today, we faced an enemy that we could not have defeated with tradition alone. Today, we learned that courage, adaptability, and quick thinking matter more than rigid rules. Let this day be remembered, not for the battle we fought, but for what we learned. Humans bring a spark that can change everything." He was a symbol of something greater, a reminder that strength was not only measured in muscle or discipline, but in ingenuity, instinct, and the refusal to give up. That night, the twin moons of Saratha's prime shone brightly over the city. Cadden sat beside Liara on the palace balcony, exhausted but alert. He looked out at the damaged city and the quiet streets, his mind racing with strategies, ideas, and possibilities for the future. "You changed the way they fight," Liara said softly. "Not just the warriors, but the city, the people, maybe even Saratha's itself. And sometimes, we surprise everyone along the way." Humanity had arrived on Saratha's prime, not by conquest, but by courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. And though the battle had been won, Cadden knew the galaxy held far greater challenges. But for the first time, he felt ready. He would face them not as a stranded human, but as a warrior, a leader, and an inspiration. The morning light painted Saratha's prime in soft shades of gold and green, but the calm was deceptive. Cadden stood atop a palace terrace, his eyes scanning the horizon. The alien invaders had retreated after their last attack, but intelligence reports suggested they were regrouping. This time they would not return in small waves. They would strike with everything they had, aiming to destroy the city and subdue the people. Princess Liara joined him, her expression serious but steady. "They will come stronger," she said. "This is not a raid. This is an all-out assault. We cannot fight them the way we did before." "Again, we need to think differently," Cadden told Liara. "We need traps, diversions, and unpredictable movements. We can't just meet them head-on." Each unit had a mix of warriors, civilians trained in emergency tactics, and volunteers willing to defend their home. He paired each unit with a Sarathian warrior who knew the city's layout and the alien patterns. Then he began assigning them tasks that seemed unconventional. Some would create noise and movement to lure enemies into traps. Others would hide and attack from above or behind. Cadden even suggested using portions of the forest surrounding the city, setting up camouflaged snare traps, and using reflective crystals to confuse sensors. Many of the warriors doubted the plan. It was messy, chaotic, and unlike any organized battle they had been trained for. But Cadden insisted. "It may look chaotic to you," he said, "but chaos is our weapon. The aliens expect order. We give them unpredictability." The first wave of drones descended, firing energy beams at the city walls. Sarathian warriors responded instinctively, but Cadden had already positioned his units strategically. Drones that expected to meet disciplined warriors instead found themselves trapped, lured into ambushes, and disabled with simple but clever methods. Rocks, vines, and reflective crystals created confusion. Even the elite drones, built to adapt, struggled against tactics that defied predictability. Cadden ran through the battlefield, shouting instructions, directing units, and improvising solutions on the fly. At one point, an energy turret targeted Liara, its beams cutting dangerously close. Cadden leaped into action, throwing a reflective shard to redirect the beam, giving Liara a chance to strike the approaching alien warrior with her spear. The battle intensified as the aliens deployed their command unit, a massive, heavily armored ship that hovered above the city like a dark star. Its energy shields pulsed with destructive power, and smaller drones protected it as it prepared to strike. Cadden studied the ship carefully. "There's a weak point where the shields overlap," he said to Liara. "It's small, but we can exploit it. We'll need to distract them first." "You strike the weak point." He coordinated their timing carefully, using signals and subtle cues that only the teams he had trained would understand. The charges detonated with precision. The command ship's shields flickered and failed momentarily. Liara and Cadden seized the opportunity. They led a direct assault, climbing onto the ship using energy grapples and scaling the hull with agility and speed. Inside, the corridors were labyrinthine, but Cadden relied on his intuition and adaptability, navigating traps and obstacles the aliens had set. The aliens were surprised by their approach. Sarathians normally relied on overwhelming numbers and strict combat routines. Cadden's unpredictability, combined with Liara's skill and authority, allowed them to strike at the core of the command ship, disabling its main systems. Explosions rocked the vessel as the remaining drones fell from the sky, unable to protect their command center. The invaders panicked. Their attack faltered as their strategy crumbled. Cadden's combination of ingenuity and bold action had turned a near-certain defeat into a decisive victory. Sarathian warriors who had doubted him now followed his lead without hesitation, inspired by his courage and clever thinking. Even as the battle raged, Cadden noticed the exhaustion in Liara's eyes. She had fought alongside him, risking herself at every turn. He realized that their partnership was not just tactical, it was emotional. Trust had formed between them, a bond that went beyond the battlefield. He protected her and she protected him, and together they amplified the strengths of everyone around them. When the command ship finally exploded, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet, the remaining invaders retreated in disarray. The city was battered, but the people cheered. They had survived a threat that no one expected them to face. And at the center of it all, a human warrior stood beside the princess, exhausted, scratched, and covered in soot, yet alive and victorious. The aftermath was a mix of celebration and recovery. Citizens rebuilt damaged structures, tended to the wounded, and honored the warriors who had fought bravely. Cadden moved among the people, helping where he could, offering reassurance and organizing efforts to secure the city. His leadership inspired trust, not just among the Sarathians, but among the human volunteers who had joined the defense. Liara stood beside him on the palace balcony that evening, watching the city as it slowly returned to life. "You did more than fight," she said softly. "You showed everyone something important today. Humans are not just outsiders. You are something more. That's what humans do. We survive by thinking differently. But you believed in me when no one else did. That made all the difference. You've changed the way people see themselves, the way they see what is possible." The aliens had come expecting easy victory, but they had underestimated the human spirit, and that miscalculation had cost them dearly. As night fell, the city glowed softly under the twin moons. Fires had been extinguished, structures repaired, and warriors stood watch, alert but calm. Cadden and Liara remained on the balcony, looking at the horizon. Beyond the stars, the galaxy stretched wide, full of unknown dangers and possibilities. "We've won today," Liara said, her voice quiet but steady. "But I have a feeling this is only the beginning. And together, we'll show the galaxy that strength is not only in numbers or tradition, but in courage, creativity, and the will to act when others hesitate." But tonight, Sarathi's Prime stood victorious, not because of brute strength or rigid tactics, but because of something far rarer and more powerful, the human spark. Cadden finally allowed himself to rest, leaning against Liara. He was bruised, tired, and scratched from the battle, but inside he felt alive. Every mistake he had made, every challenge he had faced had taught him something new. Every choice had shown him the value of adaptability, intelligence, and courage. And as he looked at the princess beside him, he realized that together they had done more than survive. They had changed the course of their world. The night deepened, and the stars shone brighter than ever, reflecting on the crystalline landscape. Cadden thought of the battles still to come, the threats still lurking beyond the edge of known space, and the endless possibilities that awaited humanity. He knew that challenges would arise again, but he also knew something fundamental. Humans were not to be underestimated. And in the quiet glow of the city, Cadden felt a surge of determination. He had arrived on Saratha's Prime by chance, but he would remain there by choice, not just as a warrior, but as a force that could redefine the future. The princess had claimed him, yes, but little did she know he would change everything, not just for her, but for the entire galaxy. The city of Saratha's Prime was quiet, almost eerily so. After the last battle, the streets had been cleared, the fires extinguished, and the injured cared for. But the air was thick with tension. The invaders had retreated, but their threat had not vanished. Everyone knew they could return, stronger and more organized. Cadden stood at the edge of the city, overlooking the valley below, where the alien ships had first landed. His human mind could not rest while danger lingered. Princess Liara joined him silently, her cloak brushing the ground as she approached. "You're thinking ahead again," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Cadden shrugged. "I can't help it. If they come back, and they will, we need to be ready. We need to turn the lessons we've learned into something permanent, something the city can rely on." Humans were rare in this galaxy, often underestimated, and yet here he stood, a hero whose creativity and courage had turned the tide of battle. The Sarathians now saw that strength was not only in muscles or tradition, but in quick thinking, adaptability, and the will to act in the face of uncertainty. Cadden began organizing the city's defenses for the possibility of a renewed invasion. He trained Sarathian warriors and civilian volunteers alike, teaching them unconventional tactics, how to use the environment, how to improvise traps, and how to anticipate unpredictable moves from enemies. He showed them how to combine traditional Sarathian combat techniques with human ingenuity, blending discipline with creativity. By nightfall, the city hummed with quiet energy. Scouts patrolled the outskirts and small teams moved through the forests, placing improvised traps and preparing defenses. Cadden walked among them, offering advice, encouragement, and occasionally a joke to lift spirits. Even the warriors who had doubted him now listened attentively, following his instructions without hesitation. He had become more than a human outsider. He was a leader. Liara joined him in the war room, a large chamber filled with maps, communication devices, and tactical displays. "What's our plan if they return?" she asked. Cadden traced his finger across the holographic map. "We split our forces into small, mobile units. We keep them unpredictable. We make them fight everywhere at once and nowhere at the same time. They expect order. We give them chaos. We use traps, ambushes, and diversions. And when the time is right, we hit their command ship directly. We've learned where it's vulnerable, and we can exploit it." The humans, Sarathians, and volunteers trained relentlessly, coordinated by Cadden's strategic mind. He worked tirelessly, pushing himself harder than anyone else, yet never showing fatigue to the troops. His ability to adapt and improvise inspired everyone, creating confidence in those who had once doubted him. Finally, the invaders returned. Their fleet was larger, faster, and more heavily armed than before. But this time, the city was ready. Cadden's strategies had turned the streets and forests into a labyrinth of traps, ambushes, and distractions. The invaders were forced to divide their attention, constantly adjusting to unexpected resistance. Cadden ran through the battlefield, coordinating units, shouting instructions, and improvising as the situation demanded. At one point, a massive alien drone aimed directly for the city's central square. Cadden quickly calculated a route and led a team to intercept it, luring it into a trap where falling debris disabled its energy systems. Liara and her warriors struck from the sides, overwhelming the drone. The invaders' command ship hovered above, preparing to unleash its energy beams on the city. Cadden noticed the same weakness as before. The shields overlapped in a small, vulnerable section. But this time, the challenge was greater. The aliens had adapted to their previous tactics. Cadden needed a plan that was more daring than anything they had tried. He gathered a team of the most skilled warriors, including Liara, and briefed them quickly. "We're going to create multiple diversions," he said, pointing to the map. 3 groups will attack from different sides. Civilians will create distractions along the perimeter. I'll lead the strike team directly to the weak point. Timing has to be perfect. One mistake and we all fail. Every move he made reflected not just skill, but creativity, a combination of instinct, intelligence, and courage. The alien command ship, expecting a direct assault like before, was unprepared for the complexity and unpredictability of Cadden's plan. Diversions pulled drones away from the weak point, traps disabled energy weapons, and teams attacked from unexpected angles. Cadden and Liara reached the vulnerable section of the ship, scaling its hull with grappling hooks and agile precision. Inside, the corridors were filled with alien soldiers, but Cadden adapted quickly, directing Liara and the team to use both strategy and improvisation to neutralize threats. Finally, they reached the command core. Cadden studied it carefully, understanding the systems in a way no Sarathian could. "We hit it now," he said. Liara nodded, and together they triggered a precise series of charges. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as energy systems failed. The remaining invaders panicked, their organized assault collapsing. Outside, the city's defenders pushed forward, inspired by Cadden's leadership. The alien fleet, now disorganized and confused, began to retreat. Sarathi's Prime had won. When the battle ended, the city was battered but victorious. Citizens cheered, warriors celebrated, and the surviving invaders fled into the stars, humbled by a human they had underestimated. Cadden stood beside Liara, exhausted but alive, looking out over the city he had helped save. Liara turned to him, pride shining in her eyes. "You've done more than fight, Cadden. You've changed the way this city, and maybe even this planet, thinks about strength. You've shown that courage, creativity, and adaptability matter as much as muscle and tradition. You trusted me, and that made the difference." Even the warriors who had once doubted him now followed his lead, inspired by his courage and ingenuity. Weeks later, as the city fully recovered, Liara and Cadden stood on the palace balcony once more, looking out over the streets below. Children played among the repaired buildings, citizens walked freely, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of life returning to normal. "You've changed more than the city," Liara said softly. "You've changed me, Cadden. You've shown me what it means to think beyond rules, to trust instinct, and to lead with courage. Together, we've done something extraordinary, and we will continue to do so. Humans have a spark that can change the galaxy, Cadden, and now that spark is part of Sarathi's Prime." The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and unknown dangers, but he no longer felt fear. He had learned that humanity's greatest strength lay not in size, technology, or numbers, but in creativity, courage, and the will to act when others hesitate. And for the first time, he felt at home. He had arrived on Sarathi's Prime by chance, a stranger in a strange world. But he would remain there by choice, not just as a warrior, but as a symbol of human potential. Liara stood beside him, her hand brushing his, and together they looked out at the horizon. The galaxy stretched before them, full of possibilities, challenges, and adventures. And together they would face it, showing that even in the darkest moments, humans could rise, adapt, and inspire an entire world. The city below hummed with life, and the people of Sarathi's Prime had learned a powerful lesson. Victory was not always about strength, tradition, or technology. It was about courage, ingenuity, and the spark of the human spirit that could change everything. Cadden took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past battles and the hope of the future. He smiled, turning to Liara. "This is only the beginning," he said. Liara smiled back. "Then let's make sure the galaxy never forgets what humans can do."